Well, hey, folks, and welcome to, I guess this is review number 19 in the Vitruvian Project reading list for 2021. So before I get started, what is the Vitruvian Project? The Vitruvian Project is my uh, my way of improving always in all ways. And part of that involved doing a lot more reading. And I set a goal for myself at the first of this year to read a minimum of 52 books. Now, for some of you out there, reading a book a week is child's play. You're used to reading probably 3 books a week or more. I just, Ben Greenfield, who I follow, Ben Greenfield Fitness, check him out. If you don't know who Ben Greenfield is, you should know who Ben Greenfield is. The guy is absolutely astonishing as just how amazing he is. It's astonishing and amazing all in once. Wow, I really think a lot of this guy, don't I? But anyway, I read a deal where he reads a book a day. And so I'm actually going to be reviewing one of his books. I've got a funny video I put out on Instagram, and please follow me there at Jason right now, where his book Boundless that I'm going to do a review on. It's going to take a little while. I'm not going to read that in a week because it's the size of a textbook. It's a monster book, but I've started to get into it, and it's phenomenal. And so anyway, please consider subscribing to the Vitruvian Letter at jasonrightnow.com or thevitruvianproject.com, where you will find out all the things that I'm doing as part of the Vitruvian Letter or the Vitruvian Project, which again, the motto is simple: to improve always in all ways, with mindfulness, with biohacking, with health, nutrition, just being a better father, husband, neighbor, citizen, you name it. I want to improve always in all ways. And like John Wooden used to always talk about, it's not about winning. He didn't coach necessarily to win. He coached to have his players reach as close to their full potential as possible, knowing that if they were playing at as close to their full potential as possible, then the wins would take care of themselves. And as a result, 88 straight games, won 10 NCAA championships, I think 10, maybe 11, but I think 10. Anyway, so that's a little bit of an intro to this, but let's get into this week's book, which was a fun read, a very insightful read about human nature. I don't know about you, but I love just trying to understand why people do the things they do. I was actually a sociology minor in undergrad, and I used to tell people that the reason why I chose that as a minor is because I wanted to know why people did what they did. That was a bunch of bullcrap. I did it because it required no math. However, I did get to take some cool classes like anthropology and in classes that gave me insight, and it actually heightened my interest in why people do what they do. And in this book, Influence, it talks a lot about why we do the things we do and how we can be manipulated and how we can use these tactics to get what we want. And there's some people that use influence for perverse reasons. Like the book goes into how car salesmen, you always hear about the proverbial bad used car salesman, how they are able to kind of manipulate the transaction to get you to buy something that you otherwise never would have. If you read this book, you will be a better negotiator. One of the things it covers is why in the world would a group of people, over 900, I believe, in Ghana, that drank the Kool-Aid. You've always heard that, well, he drank the Kool-Aid. You really drank the Kool-Aid, right? Well, that's referring to Jonestown, where Jim Jones, the charismatic cult leader, I can't remember the Guardian. Is that what they were called? No, that was another cult that it talks about. But it goes into why those people willingly took their own lives en masse in a very systematic and very calm fashion. It talks about the influence of crowds and herds and watching, mirroring and some of those sorts of things. And this was a fascinating piece of the book that I literally, in huge letters, I don't know if you can see that, wrote, use this as an anecdote for the review. And I thought it was good because, and you'll understand why. So have you noticed that the news these days kind of sucks? our national media is garbage. It's just absolute garbage. And if you want to leave comments and defend the American media, I don't care. I'm not going to name any particular outlet. I don't care which one you talk about. They are all crap. They suck. It is up to you and I to go dig and find our own information and inform ourselves. And that's why I think a lot of reading history to understand what's going on in the present is very, very valuable. And you will see how messages get manipulated. And anyway, I won't get on too much of a soapbox, but I just want to tell you, for what it's worth, my personal opinion is the American media sucks. All of it sucks. It's all freaking garbage. It's a dumpster fire. It's a piece of crap. A bunch of ideological hacks are now writing and trying to tell you and I what we should believe, and that we're evil if we don't believe what they believe. It's garbage. It's crap. So therefore, with that slight little editorial lead in, I suggest you don't watch the news. I don't watch the news. I don't watch. I read some of my news, but for the most part, I don't. And here is a great reason for you to turn off the news. Did you know that? Let me get to this part. This is crazy. Any factor that can spur 70% of New Yorkers to return that's something else. I'm sorry. Okay, here's the anecdote I wanted to give you guys. For example, it has been shown that immediately following certain kinds of highly publicized suicide stories, the number of people who die in commercial airline crashes increases by 1,000%. Even more alarming, the increase is not limited to airplane deaths. The number of automobile fatalities shoots up as well. What could possibly be responsible? One explanation suggests itself immediately. The same social conditions that cause some people to commit suicide cause others to die accidentally. For instance, certain individuals, the suicide prone, may react to stressful societal events, economic downturns, rising crime rates, international tensions, by ending it all. But others will react differently to these same events. They might become angry or impatient or nervous or distracted. It goes on. Here's what I took from that. Imagine, and I didn't do this before the review, but I want to go back and check this out. Imagine when Kurt Cobain committed suicide. Apparently, there was probably, based on these findings, the day that Kurt Cobain, not only was a suicide, but it was highly publicized. And so what the book goes into is that whenever there's a highly publicized suicide, then plane crashes, automobile accidents, just deaths go up in the few days and weeks preceding the suicide. How random is that? And here's another thing. It doesn't have to be someone famous. If someone regionally commits suicide, then, and we read about it, we learn about it, either we hear about it on the news, we read it in the newspaper, then accident rates, plane crashes, they go up as a result. And it goes into why that could be the case. Here's the deal. I just thought it was a great reason to tell you, again, to not watch the news. Our media is crap, so don't watch the news. And now you have a really good reason, not just because they're all a bunch of editorializing, opinionated hacks, but because it can actually be bad for your health. And so that was something that I thought was very, very informative. Now, here was another one that I found really useful. How many times have you been in a situation where someone asks you to lunch and then they go, nope, I'll get the tab. I'll pay for it. I'll pay for it. And it seems innocent enough to say, sure, go right ahead. Well, what you have set yourself up for is allowing that person to have influence over you. There's a whole chapter dedicated to the idea of accepting favors. And now, granted, if it's just you and a buddy, you and a family member, and they're picking up the tab, this may not always, it's not something to be so sensitive to. However, if it is someone that in the future could potentially use that favor over your head, then the best thing to do is to try to say no in all circumstances. Do not fall for the trap. There are groups that actually use the understanding of human beings somewhat the need for reciprocation. That's what it is. We feel like we need to reciprocate whatever favor. And there are groups that will take advantage of this. The Hare Krishnas, and this is not to knock the Hare Krishnas by any means. They're not like the media. I won't bash the media. They suck. Hare Krishna, I'm not bashing. But what they will do, if you go up in the airport, and it's not like it was back in the day, where they were very identifiable. You knew they were Hare Krishna. They had their shaved heads with little ponytails, and they wore the gowns, and they would come up and they give you a flower. Well, the flower was an act of reciprocation. It was basically saying, here is a gift. And what that would do is it would automatically place in the mind of the person receiving it, okay, I've received a gift, and so I should at least listen. And you know what? Whenever you realize just this, the human nature of someone giving you something, even if it's something you absolutely don't want, but it will help you to lower your guard. Imagine walking down Las Vegas Boulevard, the Avenue of Americas in New York, where they're handing out these, or you're by Central Park in New York, and they're wanting to give you something to, like, here's a pamphlet, to a map, so that you'll eventually, hopefully, in their case, you'll be nice. They've given you something, and then you will have a handsome cab ride or something like that. It's the act of reciprocation. The book goes into how powerful this can be for gaining influence. So, there was a movie that I was trying to think of where, As Good as It Gets. So, you remember where Jack Nicholson, he pays for Spencer's medical bills, and then he's going to drive his neighbor to Maryland to get some money from his parents, and he tells Helen Hunt, she's like, wait, you now expect me to, I'm now obligated to go with you because of this thing you did or whatever. And he said, can you see it any other way? He didn't start out using it as a favor to hold over her head, but she had accepted this huge favor, which she was reluctant to do at first, and then it came back to play. Even though Jack Nicholson did not do the favor wanting anything in return, he had it in his favor bank account, if you will, and Helen Hunt was kind of obligated to go on the road trip. So, As Good as It Gets, great old film you never hear about. Isn't it weird that there's movies? That was a Best Picture, and I think that's Helen Hunt won an Academy Award for it, and I think Jack Nicholson won a Best Supporting Actor for As Good as It Gets, maybe his last one. And yet, that's one of those movies that just kind of came and went, and now every once in a while it'll show up on Prime. And but anyway, it has nothing to do with this review, but I like As Good as It Gets. So I may have to watch that now that I've thought about it. But reciprocation, it's in there. What else? This was a read that I don't know how you would necessarily classify it as. It's definitely a business book. It definitely could be seen as a business book because it teaches you some tools and tactics that could be used in business. But I don't know. It's a fascinating read. It really is a fascinating read on human nature, and it's good. It's a really quick, easy read. It talks about how the power that authority plays. Let's see, what does this say? In fact, they begin and ask groups. Just a second here. I can't. I'm not going to read that. But this it basically the groupthink section was really in the influence of groups and how they work in today's society. I thought was really, really kind of apropos, given that we have a big time herd mentality going on at right now with different groups. And one of the stories that it mentioned, I didn't know this, but the Indians back in the day, buffalo were a huge part of their diet, and they would use their coats and everything. And so the buffalo was a very very big staple of their life, right? And one of the ways that the Indians would have a huge buffalo hunt is they would run them toward a cliff. Buffalo, they follow the herd and they look down. They don't look up. They just is whatever they can tell which way the herd is moving because they can only look outward. They can't really see forward very well. So they run in a herd with their head down. And the Indians knew that if they could run them towards a cliff, as long as the lead buffalo goes over the cliff, then the rest of them would follow suit. They would follow the herd over the cliff. And so the book goes into the perils of following the herd, and how if you can get a herd moving in one direction, that could be a very powerful thing. It's a great book. It is a good book. I think that anyone should read it. It's been out for a while. This is the revised edition. It is, and here's something that I kind of put this into use when I go on vacation. I don't really like to. I'm not one of those guys that likes to meet the new people out by the pool or whatever. I don't. It's weird. You're sitting there, you're talking. It's like, should we exchange names? Because I'm probably never going to see you again, but hey, I'm Jason. And they're like, hey, I'm John. I'm like, okay, I don't really care, but okay. And, a lot of people you meet are genuinely nice and they're great and they can be fun to kind of visit with and learn from. But a lot of them are just there to tell you how wonderful they are, how great they are. And I just want to go, yeah, I don't care about any of that. We're both at the same resort. We're good. Who cares? I had one of these people that I ran into recently on a vacation. And, one of the things the book talks about to gain authority is when you start asking questions of someone, especially a braggart or someone who obviously is kind of taken with themselves. If you get them to start defending their awesomeness, then you immediately gain the upper hand, right? Because now they're having to sell themselves to you, and it's kind of a fun little trick, actually. And I like it a lot because, not to be cynical, but especially in the male world, a lot of guys, when they meet, the underlying question is, are you richer than me? Are you smarter than me? Do you have a bigger house? That's what I really want to know. That's what these questions are leading to. But we can't do that because that's not socially appropriate. And so when you meet somebody that's kind of cocky and arrogant like that, which is like my just nemesis, I'm a very humble guy. I don't give two craps about how much money anyone has or where they went to school, which, okay, that's a great example. These people that I met, they were such education snobs. It was hilarious. I'm a first generation college graduate. I went to Stephen F. Austin State University, which most of you, unless you're someone who went to school with me, have never even heard of. It's a small state school in Texas, which I love. And then I went to SMU to business school, which again, unless you're outside the Texas area, you may have never heard of SMU as well, but it's a highly rated business school. And I used to be that academic snob myself, or I was probably just had an inferiority complex because again, first generation college graduate, didn't go to a marquee undergrad. And so I thought that's how you validated yourself. But these people were, my God, they know this much about me and my wife and my children. And I know this much about their children and what they do and how much money they make and how they made their money and what schools they went to. I know how much, and this woman that I met, one of them, she was in her 60s. And I know the body fat percentage of one of her sons. Yeah, it was that kind of conversation. So I started posing some questions. He was given his profession. I started asking him questions. Well, were you good? Oh, did that pay well? Oh, and that's a good one. That's a good one when you have to start getting people to defend how rich they are. Oh, so fun. And then whenever you throw out a congratulations, not condescending, just, oh, congratulations. Like, wow. Anyway, I digress on my diabolical scheme to have influence over these jackasses, and just leave it with influence. Great read, fun read, always good to learn how to control conversations, how to gain influence, how to leverage it, how to not be sucked into a situation in which you give the other person influence over you. Really, really good stuff. Highly recommend this book. Robert Cialdini, I think is how you pronounce his name. Robert Cialdini. I'm pretty sure that's right, but either way, Cialdini maybe, but I think it's Cialdini. Either way, doesn't matter. Read the book, and please consider subscribing to the Vitruvian Letter. I would really be grateful. Check me out at jasonrightnow.com. I've got a lot of articles out there about just different things that I'm studying, philosophy I'm looking into, a lot of stuff about stoicism and that sort of thing. It's really beneficial. It's quick. It's to the point. And I believe that the things that I'm doing to improve always and always, I'm not that unique. You could learn from it too. I think you'll find it fascinating, the different things out there, and use me as your guinea pig and pick up some tools along the way that you can incorporate in your life. And I would be most grateful. Also, I have a podcast, the Texas Titans podcast, available on Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, wherever you listen to podcasts. Check it out. The Texas Titans podcast. It's where I interview leaders from all over Texas in particular, entrepreneurs, business leaders, authors, physicians, health and wellness experts. But I do go outside the state. I mean, and not all of them are native Texans. Some are transplants that have come here to the Lone Star State and are doing really cool things. The most recent episode was Dr. Michael Eads, who is a New York Times best-selling author of the book Protein Power, which was one of the very first books. He is a pioneer in the low-carb, high-fat diet discipline. And so Dr. Eads is a great, brilliant guy. And so it's a good conversation. I've actually had him on a couple of times. Coming up, I've got a really good episode with the founder of Organic Muscle, which is an Austin-based organic protein powder and supplement company. And so that's James Benefico is the founder of that company. Have a great conversation with him again about how it's I'll break it up in several ways with like a conversation like with James. It's like, okay, how do you become an entrepreneur? How did you start your business? And what are some of the ups, the downs of that roller coaster ride? And then we get into the health and wellness aspect of it. So it kind of covers everything. So anyway, Texas Titan podcast, check that out. And with that, thanks for listening to the review. Please consider subscribing. Leave me some comments. And if they're kind, be kind, okay? So, or otherwise, I'll use some Jedi mind trick influence stuff on you that I just learned from this book. And you don't want that. Thanks for listening, folks. Have an incredible day. And look, do this for the rest of the weekend. I want to know that you are crushing it. Got it? All right, I'm out.